Bonjour les amis. Bienvenue à Paris. Bonjour, bonjour. Welcome. We are standing outside a beautiful park in Paris in the 19th arrondissement. The name of the park is Buttes Chaumont, and you see it here on this metro station, which is one of the two ways you can come here. There are two metro stations that take you here, or you can walk as well. And they come on the same metro line, which is this ridiculous little line called 7 bis, 7 bis, B-I-S. But this is how you get here if you don't walk. Bonjour, I see you pop up, welcome. So we are outside Les Buttes Chaumont, one of a favorite Parisian park. If you ask Parisians, especially young Parisians, what their favorite park in Paris is, I bet Les Buttes Chaumont would come pretty high on the list. You will get a lot of Parisian street vibes today. You may know that we are in lockdown somewhat, an interesting one, number 3.0 as I like to call it. It's an interesting one. They've now decided we really need to be outside to get some fresh air. So we don't have the 1 kilometer radius anymore. We now have 10 kilometers when we go out for fresh air with no time limit. So that's about 6 miles. So I'm using that time, this time, to take you around with me. Bonjour à tous. I see your names pop up. So here is one of several entrances into the park. Like I said, you will get a lot of Parisian vibes today because it's Saturday. The weather was gorgeous this morning. You can see that the clouds have rolled in. We might get a sun break or two, but it's not as warm as I'd like. Maybe a little windy too. I hope it won't be a problem with the microphone. Here is a rare sighting. A public restroom. For those of you who've been to Paris, you know how challenging it can be to find public restrooms in Paris. And for the last 6 months, we've lost our cafes and restaurants. And now when we go out, we need to make sure we can find one of these. You can see those people lining up because that's something you don't think about when you leave your house and go for a long stroll. And voila, need to find the place where you... well, you know what I mean. So right here is a photo exhibit which the city of Paris has organized. And I looked at it the other day. It's super interesting. I don't know if you're aware that in 2021, the city of Paris is celebrating the 150th anniversary of a very short-lived but very violent uprising. In fact, it was the last uprising by working classes in Paris in the 19th century, and it was known as La Commune. We've mentioned it on several strolls because a lot of damage was caused to Paris during those 3 months when it happened. Between March and May of 1871, it ended in a bloodshed. Many buildings were destroyed. Some of them were never rebuilt, like the beautiful palace of the Tuileries that sat outside the Louvre. Some were rebuilt, like the beautiful Hôtel de Ville, the Paris City Hall we all know by the Seine River. But I think reducing the Commune to a violent uprising is not really fair. A lot of good things came out of this. This was very much a working class movement and opposition to the Second Empire, Napoleon III, that had just been defeated in Sedan. It was born out of a siege in the fall and winter of 1870 in Paris, where Parisians suffered terribly, starved, but were very strong. And when the government folded in front of the Prussians, they did not tolerate it. And there was this major uprising from March through May. A lot of repression at the end. Many of the communards were executed, their bodies tossed in mass graves, including in this park, and I'll show you a spot where that happened. But we are now in the 19th arrondissement. I'll show you a map in a minute so you can find your bearings. And La Commune is celebrated throughout this year by the city of Paris. They had a lot of ideals, Republican ideals, and a lot of their ideas actually came into fruition decades later. These people fought for equality between men and women, for free secular education, for better working conditions. And though they were only around for 3 months, their ideas just lived on. And a lot of them were in fact enforced in Paris and in France and in the rest of Europe in the decades that followed. So that's really interesting to know about La Commune. It wasn't just violence and a bloodshed. So right here is a map. There's a gentleman interviewing another gentleman about it. But I wanted to show you this map because this map shows you what happened in 1860 when a lot of the villages around Paris were absorbed into Paris by Napoleon III. And this was the case in this neighborhood. So I have shown you a few of these. I have shown you I have shown you Les Batignolles, which was one of these villages, Montmartre. I have taken you to La Villette a few weeks ago, and just so you can see where we are now around the Parc des Buttes Chaumont, which was also outside the city limits. And in 1860, everything that was within these walls, the fortifications built in the 1850s, became Paris, basically. I'll step away because this gentleman is interviewing someone just to see how Parisians suffered in the fall and winter of 1870. Here is an illustration of a young cook who is about to kill a rat. At that time, Parisians had nothing left to eat. The Prussians were surrounding the city, and you can see here it says a rat costs 2 francs. They ate the animals from the Jardin des Plantes, for example, the elephants. They had to eat, they were starving. And so when the government finally concluded a truce, an armistice with the Prussians, a lot of Parisians did not admit this. There's enough here to do several live stream strolls, so I'm not going to chat about the commune more, but look it up. If you go to the website of the city of Paris, I think it's paris.fr, there are several articles in French they have released to explain what the commune was, how it happened, etc. But today, our focus is Le Parc des Buttes Chaumont, one of the most spectacular parks in Paris. And you can see a map here, which is really interesting. You can see the shape of the park, which was built in a crescent shape. And the heart of it is really here, the lake, with an island in the middle. There are many entrances, and right here, right now we are standing, we are standing right here. Okay, so there were many entrances, there were several restaurants, some of them are still here, in fact all of them are still here, they're just very different now. And Parisians love coming here. What's striking about this park compared to other parks in Paris is that it's not flat. If you go to the Tuileries Gardens, if you go to the Luxembourg Gardens, these are very, very flat parks. So we will talk about why this park was created like this, why it isn't flat. It's about 50 acres, but it sounds a lot larger. It actually sounds a lot larger than that. It looks, I should say, a lot larger than that. Okay, so if you're ready, I won't be able to show you the whole park, obviously, but I thought I'd highlight a few landmarks in the park. This is one of the guard houses that were built. There are about 5 or 6 around the park. You're going to see a lot of people out, so this certainly doesn't look like a lockdown, does it? And I'm assuming on Sunday it will get even busier if the weather is nice. On Sundays in the summer here, it's packed. I mean, those lawns get packed with Parisians who come and picnic. So I'm assuming that's going to happen tomorrow. Now, we're not supposed to have more than 6 people getting together outside, and the police has been asked to strictly enforce that, so we'll see what happens. Merci, Julie. So we're going to stroll, and as we stroll, I'll tell you a few stories. And you know what I do? I like to connect the past with the present. I like to show you how neighborhoods have changed. And yes, somebody pointed out this week, I have a tendency to stay in the outskirts of Paris, north of Paris, in fact, in a lot of those former working class neighborhoods of Paris. I really enjoy them. I think enough time is spent covering all the beautiful neighborhoods by the Seine River, where a lot of visitors like to congregate. And I think the history that's still around here in those former working class neighborhoods is actually quite fascinating. And this is Paris as well, which is why I tend to spend a lot of time on these. That and the fact that I live in the 17th arrondissement, which is northwest of Paris as well. So all of these are easily accessible for me when we have lockdowns and restrictions like we've had for the last, I don't know, year. So quick little hello. Bonjour mes amis. This is what I look like with a face mask on. Most of you know me already, but if you don't, my name is Véronique Véro. I am a French native based in Paris. I am a tour guide, a French language instructor, a content creator, and somehow I bring it all together to share my love of France and Paris as well. So this is what we do. This is what we do here. There are live strolls, there are other things as well, and I'll tell you a little bit more as we go along. Coucou, coucou, I see the cuckoos, which means hello, hi. All right, so the park is huge. There are alleyways going left and right, and you can see, I mean, it's a bit of a hike sometimes. Some of them are really wooded like these. Some of the gardens have themes on them, and other sections are a little bit more flat or open with grassy areas. So we'll see some of them today. We are headed towards a bridge. We have two major bridges here, but this one here, is dedicated to Gustave Eiffel, the father of the Eiffel Tower. I don't know if you know that before he built the Eiffel Tower, he was actually a very skilled engineer, and he built a lot of bridges that were very useful to the army, the French army, and other armies as well. So that was one of his skills. And Gustave Eiffel actually built one of the two famous bridges in this park, which is why they dedicated this one to him. It's not one of the two I'm talking about. We'll see them a little later. Lots of Parisians out, as you can see. Families. What we're going to see now, the lockdown gets enforced at 7 p.m. They just pushed it off by an hour now because days are longer. You'll probably see some people, young people especially, with drinks that they bring here and sit in remote corners in the hope that they can have an apéro anyway, even though they're not supposed to do it. And I believe the park is open around the clock right now. Oh, thanks for mentioning the YouTube channel, Bob. Yes, for those of you who are new here, I think the word has finally gotten out that I have a great YouTube channel called France with Véro, where I've shared for a year a lot of replays of my live strolls, a lot of video tours that I film offline as well. And I used to have about 400 followers or subscribers on YouTube a year ago. I now have, I think I'm getting closer to, I'm between 3,000 and 4,000. So I'm quite proud of that. And if you'd like to head over there later and travel virtually, there's plenty there to keep you busy and take you around France, because I always share my travels with you. So make sure to subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, and when you like a video, give it a like, because it's good for the YouTube rankings. Then they know I'm a hot shot and they'll push my videos more. So thank you very much in advance for doing that, and thank you, Bob, for mentioning it. Hey Ollie, good to see you. All right, I'm not gonna leave the park, but I want to show you this magnificent building. This is a hospital, and it's been here since 1905. It's the Rothschild Foundation, specializing in ophthalmology, and the Rothschild family, in French we say Rothschild, opened these hospitals and wanted people to be able to get treatment for free, no matter what their religious or political views were, which was quite groundbreaking at the time. The building is magnificent. It's still a hospital. It's still affordable. Some people get treated for free here when they have no money. And the architecture is splendid because it is, pure Belle Époque style. You can see the brick because we are in a working class neighborhood, and in working class neighborhoods, they use the brick because it was cheaper, but also the ceramic accents that were really prevalent. In the during the Belle Époque until World War I. So you can see some really nice structures, the guard houses. You can see the Gustave Eiffel bridge we just walked under. So I'm going to follow this long pathway that kind of swerves around the park. So I chose this route because I thought it was the one that would enable you to see as much as possible. You'll need to come here though and explore more. There's a lot to see here. Okay, we have joggers, we have strollers, we have tour guides, live streaming. This is quite the scene, isn't it? At least we're outside, even with face masks on. So I am going to go this way, I think. Need to put my glasses on so I can see what this one is. Yeah, I think I'll go this way. If I get lost, it's not a problem. You always end up finding something you know. This one's called Avenue des Marnes. So, this park. What about this park? This is a beautiful romantic park. The type of romantic gardens and parks that were extremely popular in the 19th century, in the second half of the 19th century, during a time in French history known as the Second Empire, when Napoleon III was in power. He was the nephew of the other Napoleon, and he ruled roughly from 1852 through 1870, right before the Commune uprising I mentioned, when he was defeated and went into oblivion and into exile. He was very fond of these parks. This park was built in just 3 years and inaugurated just in time before the World Fair of 1867. Two of the World Fairs that happened, he had two happening during the Second Empire, and there were about 5 or 6 in the 19th century. So a World Fair was a chance for a country to showcase their talent, their skill, their power. And so he was intent on showing that this park, born out of nothing, we will talk about that in a minute, would impress people. The interesting part about this neighborhood is that this neighborhood has a very grimy, depressing past. Look at that. I wanted to come here to show you the people. Picture this on a summer day at lunchtime or in the afternoon on a Sunday. This is packed with people always. You see? I think I'll go this way actually. Yes, lots of white tennis shoes. Very, very big in Paris and in France in general for all age groups. Everybody wearing tennis shoes. White tennis shoes preferably. So you'll see families here, but they're usually young families. It's mostly young people who come here, a lot of them. Or people who live in this area, I guess. I came here a few days ago to scout and it was completely empty because it had just rained. So I've got to say it looks really different now. Bonjour and welcome if you've just joined us. We are strolling around the Parc des Buttes Chaumont. I'm glad you got to see the lawn, the grassy area. If you come here in the summer, it will remind you, well, for the older ones among you, you'll probably feel like you're back at Woodstock in 1969. That's what the place looks like, really. So the romantic park needs to have a few attributes to qualify as a romantic 19th century park. It needs to have, of course, beautiful landscaping, and it needs to have waterfalls, brooks, streams, romantic little streams, grottos, suspended bridges, some very classical looking structures and monuments, and this park has it all. Now Napoleon III wanted 4 large parks to anchor Paris, north, south, east and west. Northern side or northeastern side was this one, les Buttes Chaumont, created from scratch, and we'll see why it was a feat really. In the south we had the Parc in the 14th arrondissement, if you've been there. It was done at that time. West of Paris, we had the Bois de Boulogne, which they worked on heavily. And then on the east of Paris, we had the Bois de Vincennes. But they didn't stop there. they also created little squares or public gardens in many Parisian neighborhoods. This one, though, is quite unique in terms of the terrain. Welcome, friends. I see you pop up. Like I said, romantic park. We need some waterfalls. We need some brooks and streams. We need some picnics, apparently. So clearly, Parisians are not too traumatized by lockdown 3.0. Not sure what this gentleman is doing there. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Welcome. All right, so now the trick is to step on this without slipping, or you'll get to see Veronique swimming in the Parc des Buttes Chaumont. I'm a good swimmer, so I'm not afraid to fall in, but I bet the water's really cold. Isn't that pretty? Now, one thing I should point out is a lot of the wood that you see in the structures, a lot of the rock that you'll see in this park is actually not rock. It's made of concrete. There's a lot of concrete in this park. Remember when we went to Montmartre and I told you the story of all these quarries that were in the northern sections of Paris? There have been quarries in Paris since the Gallo-Roman times, more than 2,000 years ago. A lot of them were on the left bank, around the 13th and 14th arrondissement, but they were also up here in the northeastern sections of Paris. And there was a big quarry here, in fact. There were a couple more right next to it. And those were gypsum quarries. So with gypsum, you used it with kilns to make the famous plaster of Paris that was used for construction and was also exported to other countries. In fact, one of the quarries nearby was called the America Quarry because they quarried quality stones from it that were shipped, that were shipped to New York City with the Statue of Liberty that was born in my arrondissement, in the 17th arrondissement. I took you on a stroll there and showed you the spot where the statue was born. And the stones traveled with the statue, and so the quarry was called the America Quarry, and the neighborhood has remained known as the Americas, right here in this neighborhood. So what's right below our feet is really a giant piece of cheesecake. Sorry, not cheesecake. Cheese, Swiss cheese. Well, mind you, cheesecake is pretty soft too. So that's the idea about the ground here. Ever since they started working on this park between 1864 and 1867, they've had a lot of work. They've had a lot of work to consolidate the ground, to pour concrete underground, all the tunnels, because these quarries were really mined from the French Revolution all the way to 1860, when the neighborhood was incorporated into Paris. Look at that. This is not as busy as on a summer day. I've seen a lot worse, but it's still pretty busy. And the government has made it clear people were not to meet more than 6 people at a time. I can see a lot of groups where we have more than 6 people. It is, let me tell you, friends, before you criticize President Macron for not being efficient right now, it is impossible to rule the French. It is impossible to lead this country. People are just not compliant. I don't know if it's a Mediterranean feature. I know they're not the only one, but man, it is hard to rule the French. All right, back to the story of the park. See the name on this plaque here? Avenue Alphand. Jean-Charles Alphand was one of the key men in Napoleon III and Baron Haussmann's team when they remodeled, transformed Paris into a big modern city in the 19th century. That man went to all the best, the top Parisian schools, was a skilled engineer, but he was also a landscaper, and they called him the engineer artist. He had a great team of people to work on this park. He had Barrier Deschamps, a great gardener. He had Beltran, who worked on the water system to bring water to the lake, we'll see in a minute. He also had, of course, Daviou, who is responsible for a lot of the urban furniture in Paris. You know, those green things that give it such a distinctive look that so many people around the world associate with Paris? That was Daviou. And he did a lot in this park. I'll show you one of the structures he built. But for example, you know those green benches you see all over Paris? Everything is green and it all matches. Well, look at what they did in this park. They're a little different from what you see in Paris. Do you see the feet on the bench here, the legs? They're supposed to look like trees, you see? So it all blends in. Yes, Jan, there are amazing trees in this section, in this area. A lot of people come here. A lot of the trees are as old as the park, not all. The park is over 150 years old. It was inaugurated in 1867, like I mentioned. This is one of the 3 restaurants that were created at the time. You won't see the other 2, the trendier ones right now. One of them is called Rosa Bonheur, after a female French artist. You'll see lots of young people lining up at night to get in, lining up again to get a drink, lining up again to get food, lining up again to sit down. This one is beautiful and it has a patio in the back overlooking sections of the park. So when they opened it, they had everything. He wanted Parisians to have a great place to enjoy Paris. And he did that in all these other parks as well with his team. So we have puppet theaters, we have playgrounds, play areas for kids. We have beautiful alleyways that of course now have been paved. We have everything for Parisians to enjoy a good time. And I guess Napoleon III would be happy to see this today, because he'd say, hey, I didn't, screw up the whole way. He wasn't a military genius, but a lot of the things he did in France and in Paris, for tourism in particular, have remained. No, Julie, I don't see any dogs. I'm not sure if it's because the park, a lot of Parisian parks are actually prohibited to dogs. People don't know that about Paris, but it's really hard to take a dog inside a park. You can take your dog inside a restaurant. That's French logic right there at work. But you cannot take a dog in a lot of the Parisian parks. Not easy to be a pooch in Paris. You can see the restaurant is closed, of course, and so is la buvette. Buvette is the French word, comes from the word boire, to drink. And la buvette is usually a little shack somewhere touristy on a beach or something. And it's always very laid back. Like you can hang out there, they have a few stools and they serve drinks. So la buvette is closed, as is the restaurant, as are all the restaurants in Paris and in France, and the cafes and the bars. And they have been closed now for 6 months, and we have no idea when they will reopen. Now, this is one of the 2 famous bridges in the park. This is the suspended bridge that takes you to the central island in the middle of the lake. We will see that from the other side. A little later, I'm going to take friends with Véro Club members who are always very spoiled and get special rewards. I'm going to take them across this bridge all the way to that structure up there. This bridge is the one that was built by Gustave Eiffel. I haven't mentioned why the past was such a difficult past for this area, but I can tell you that a long time ago, I've mentioned it on another stroll with club members, roughly for 500 years, 5 centuries until the French Revolution, 10 minutes away from here was this place. It was known as the Gibet de Montfaucon, le Gibet de Montfaucon, the gallows. For 500 years, this place stood there, and the goal was to deter, to discourage future criminals. So once they were tortured and hanged, they would leave their body to rot in fresh air like this. This was the start of the reputation of this neighborhood. A lot of violent things, bloody things happened here. At some point in time, there was a slaughterhouse to kill horses here. And once they were done using the meat and everything they needed, they let the carcasses rot out here. And there were other things, similar things happening around here. So this neighborhood was not a good neighborhood. And in fact, it is called les Buttes Chaumont. Chaumont. Chauve in French means bold, C-H-A-U-V-E. Mont for mount. So les Buttes Chaumont because it was the bold mount, or it was the barren land. There was nothing here. I want you to see this. This is what the area looked like when they started working on it, when it was still a stone quarry from the French Revolution to about 1860. Nothing grew here. The soil was just barren. They exploited it. And when Napoleon III came along, he decided to turn it into this magnificent romantic park. And I'm going to show you the island that you're looking at now with the suspended bridge. Right as they were building the park, remember it took only 3 years? You see the bridge on the right-hand side? Look at it now. And of course now is not summer. In the summer those trees would have leaves on them. It would look extremely lush and romantic. This was right before the inauguration, or at least a year before the inauguration in the 1860s. How about that? Now you understand what a feat they accomplished when they built this park. The water. How do you bring water to that artificial lake, to the waterfall we have seen and others? Well, Belgrand was the guy. Belgrand figured out a way of pumping the water from the Canal de l'Ourcq. Remember I took you to the Bassin de la Villette recently? He pumped the water from there, brought it here. That was extremely creative. And that's how they filled this lake. There are a lot of people, aren't there? I like winter or early spring because the leaves are not on the trees quite yet, and so you get to enjoy. This is really an urban park. You forget it when you're in the middle of it, but you can see here the Parisian buildings, and this is 19th century architecture. This was done during or after the Second Empire. You can see the signs, the architectural style you already know. So this is an urban park. The city is right around us. At the same time, it's a great place to stroll and forget the city. Come here, have a great time. So imagine 3 years of work, over 1,000 workers, horses, carts, a train line actually, known as La Petite Ceinture, the small beltway. We've mentioned it before on other strolls, and I will mention it again on a future stroll I'm working on. Bringing soil, quality soil, so these trees could actually grow. Picture them blowing up with dynamite some of the old quarries and then rebuilding with concrete all these mountains. And this island, and everything is artificial. In a place that for centuries was synonymous with blood and misery, where criminals would hide, they turned it into this romantic park that was inaugurated for the World Fair of 1867. And Parisians, of course, loved it. They came, the bourgeois, everybody came here to check it out. But truth be told, after a few years, it kind of declined a little bit. And then the working classes who were in this neighborhood, remember around the Bassin de la Villette, we talked about the industrialization of this area, all the warehouses and factories that were just about 10, 15, 20 minutes away from here at the Bassin de la Villette. The working classes were the ones enjoying this park. Welcome if you've just joined us. This is Véro taking you for a stroll around a historic park in Paris called Les Buttes Chaumont, a place where Parisians love to come, and some visitors as well, though it's really not as popular with back when we had tourists in Paris in the good old days. Many tourists don't come here. It's a little bit out of the way. They don't think it's, they don't know about it, so they don't come here. It is a little bit out of the way. Here's another guardhouse built by Davieu. the gentleman who did so much for the look that we know and love about Paris today, born in the 19th century. And in fact, Daviau also built this gorgeous structure here, which is the city hall, la mairie of the 19th arrondissement. He built that in the late 19th century. It's beautiful. On the facades, you have allegories that represent water, because the canals, the Paris waterways I've taken you to are in that direction over there. And I mean, look at this. So Daviau is the one who was in charge of doing, you know, when you go to the Parc where I've taken you in my neighborhood, all the street lighting, all the railings, the gates in those parks. He did fountains, you know, the beautiful Fontaine Saint-Michel on the left bank. He did theaters. He did so much. And in this park, he was in charge of the structures, the buildings, like the guardhouses right here. I almost bumped into a gentleman. Need to keep an eye on the time. We're doing great. See, we can have a great time even without the sun. If you wait for the sun in Paris, you don't do much. It gets cloudy a lot. Look at the details. The brick and the beautiful ceramic tiles. We're pretty close to the puppet theater. One of them, there's two of them. And then, you know, these balançoires, the swings, so typical of Parisian parks. Though usually they'd be green. These ones are blue and green. Here's another peek at the beautiful city hall of the 19th arrondissement built by Daviau. You would have thought he would be busy with the with the park, but he did that later. I want to show you something here that I spotted the other day. Look at the little kids. You know, we all know the wildest fountains in Paris that came out of Paris, those beautiful green fountains that a philanthropist, English philanthropist who loved Paris, Sir Richard Wallace, gifted the city with after the Commune uprising and the siege, actually after the siege of Paris, because Parisians were even out of water. These are the newer fountains. Paris, je boirai toujours de ton eau. Paris, I will always drink your water. I love these. Why? Because these are the ones where you find de l'eau, like flat water, cool water. It's cool, but it's flat. And this is the sparkling water, which we call eau pétillante. So you need to walk around with a water bottle of some sort, because what you do, I'm going to waste some of it a little bit. It's so good. And so it just falls like this. I'm going to sample it under my mask. Yes, I wish I had my bottle with me. I was going to bring it and I forgot. So, and they tell you what's in the water too. How much calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. And this is all free. So sometimes you'll see people, neighborhood people, come with a bunch of glass bottles, and they'll start filling them and take them home because it's cheaper than buying Perrier, right? We will be wrapping up in about 10 minutes if you're wondering, and then I'll move on to a second stroll, an extension tour with my club members. By now you have all heard, I think, of the Friends with Véro Club. Here is the puppet theater with Guignol, name of that famous puppet. It's closed now. Club members are the ones who enable me to continue offering these public events, those live strolls, and all the content I create daily on Facebook and Instagram. I hope you've enjoyed some of the things I've shared this week about French life and visits to Monoprix and so forth. But in return for that, club members also get spoiled with, I try to spoil them because they deserve it, with exclusive events and like strolls, events where we meet and talk about France and travel. Lots of little perks. So you can look me up, look up the club on Patreon at patreon.com/FrenchGirlInSeattle. All that information will be listed in the video notes when I come off the air, so don't worry if you don't know where that is. The good thing about the club is that as soon as you come in, you access or you unlock all the archives that I have shared with patrons and club members for the last year. The flaneur level, which is the most popular level, for the cost of 2 lattes a month, that level gets you content in English and in French, so you can practice your French and improve your French as well. One of the perks of joining a club run by a tour guide and a French language instructor. Okay, thanks for the kind comments about the club, guys. Thank you. Very busy area, isn't it? This is, we're headed to the section where you're going to see the most romantic part of the park. Thanks, Joyce. I'm glad you're enjoying the club. It is a fun group of people. And they interact in a private Facebook group, which is where they will be meeting in a few minutes for the second part of this stroll. Now, it wouldn't be a Parisian park if we didn't have this little booth here where they sell ice cream in the summer and crepes and gaufres or waffles. All Parisian parks have that, and they're usually called chalets, like in the mountains, C-H-A-L-E-T. Always a line. I've taken you many times to the one in the Parc where I live. So look at all this place has gone through. A place where they dumped horse carcasses, a place where they quarried stones and gypsum, a place that became a beautiful park for elegant people in the 19th century and other Parisians as well. And finally, a place enjoyed by Parisians in 2021, though it's a bit of a trendy place now, I must say. We have impromptu picnics going on here. They brought their own drinks. And this is the spectacular place, the lake. This artificial lake, the water comes from the Canal de l'Ourcq. Remember when I took you to the Bassin de la Villette? Imagine the pipes underground, all it took to make this happen. And this temple over there was built by Daviou as well. And it's a tribute to Greece and also to a similar structure in a city named Tivoli outside Rome. Le Temple de la Sibylle is the official name. Look at all these people enjoying. It's a lot quieter during the week, by the way. So if you come, when you come, try to hit it during the week. It will be less crowded. Let's go to the romantic part, and I will show you the second famous bridge. You've seen the suspended bridge built by Gustave Eiffel. You see all these, another stream here, a little brook with the rocks. All of that is concrete. It's not stone. Now they had a lot of setbacks, you know. There were leaks, and the park has needed work pretty much constantly through the 1960s, but a big renovation campaign started 20 years ago, and the city of Paris is still working on it as I'm saying this, to try and stabilize the soil underground and to ensure that the landscaping remains healthy and true to what they wanted to do in the 19th century. The pipe system, the water system is also kind of outdated now, and so they have to work on it to bring it up to code, if you will. So they'll be working on the park for a lot longer. Little Frenchie. All right, look, we have a few blooms left. There were more when I stopped by. This is pretty. Do you see this structure? I'm taking you there, and I won't be able to step in a lot because the cell signal would be terrible there. I would lose you. But I want you to see what they did. It wasn't just the island and the temple and the park. They actually worked with what was here, the quarries. Look at these. Isn't that pretty? Oui, le petit chien Bob. I like that they have pink and white blossoms here. Look, Isn't this nice? Even if the sky could be a little bit more blue. Merci, grisaille parisienne. Look at this place. Look at that. This is one of the highlights. This is one of the highlights of the park, one of the best features in the park, I think. One of the most striking ones, which interestingly was duplicated in smaller parks, like the Square des Batignolles, where I took you on the Batignolles tour, on a smaller scale. But a lot of the Second Empire parks have this, the Grotto, with a waterfall. Today you will not see the waterfall, it's stopped, but you can picture it when I take you in here. This, my friends, used to be the main entrance of the former quarries. So some of this rock is actually real, and some of this rock is actually concrete. I couldn't tell you which is which. That tells you how perfect it is. So normally, about 100 feet above our heads here, there'd be a huge waterfall cascading down here. And they stopped it. They're doing work, so you can't see it today. I can't go much deeper in. But you see those stalactites and stalagmites? These are all concrete, created from scratch, man-made, not actual rocks. And look at the height of the ceiling. There's a net on the ceiling. They probably have an issue with bits of it falling, so that's why they turned it off. But that waterfall was actually a big issue because the water started leaking through the ground, and you can imagine what it did to those galleries, those old galleries where the quarries were. So at points in time, they've had to really act on that. Isn't that incredible? It's a very unique park, I think. But you do have a space like this, a smaller space like this, in the Square des Batignolles, for example. Okay, let me show you one last thing, and then I'll be wrapping up the public stroll. And thank you for being here with me today. It's a lot quieter without the waterfall, for sure. So plan to spend a few hours here, at least two. Bring a picnic, buy a sandwich at a local boulangerie, and maybe a bottle of wine, whatever you want, and just, you could spend half a day here and not, get bored. There's a lot to see. The second bridge I told you about is right here. See people walking up there? One more way to go around the park. Different pathways, different ways. Oh, thanks for the supportive comments. Thank you. It had been a while since our last stroll along the Bassin de la Villette, but I like to have a theme going, and I've been following a theme, whether you realize it or not, the last few weeks. Paris waterways. I like to show you what they use that water for that we saw at the Bassin de la Villette, the Canal de l'Ours. So this is the second bridge, and this one got nicknamed Le Ponde Suicide, the bridge where people commit suicide. You can guess why. Because when it opened, people would jump and kill themselves. So eventually they built a higher, you see from here, you can see how they elevated the side so people couldn't do that. And here's a little bit of trivia for you. There was a guy in 1925, I believe, who successfully jumped with a parachute from the bridge and didn't kill himself. And, in case you don't believe me, there he is. As he's falling with his parachute, parachute's open. I don't know how he didn't kill himself. I don't think he killed himself. And here's the bridge. See? Please don't do that when you come to Paris. I don't recommend jumping with a parachute. Don't try that at home, kids. Construction, nothing new. That's Paris right now. Construction everywhere. You see how the concrete here is stabilizing the side of the cliff. So on the right is the island. That was really the highlight of the park. This romantic island with the structure at the top. And you access it from the suspended bridge or the other bridge. That's what I'll be doing in the next 10 minutes. Oh, we must have ponies, horses. I see. This is not I almost stepped in this, and this is not dog poop. Yes, Lisa, leave the parachute home. Preferable. Now today is not a sunny day, so it might be a little hard to see. But when I look back at the island behind me here, I'll tell you something they wanted to do. When they created the island and the tall cliffs on the island, man-made, remember, they actually wanted people to be reminded of another place in France. Here is the suspended bridge built by Gustave Eiffel. You see the ducks in the water. Very romantic. You hear the birds. What they said was, on a sunny day, I guess, or when the water is peaceful, when you see those cliffs reflect in the water, they wanted you to be reminded of the beautiful white cliffs of Étretat in northern Normandy, Etretat, and that's what it was supposed to remind you of. So you would be traveling. See, they already did virtual travel then, even though you were in Paris. Well, we could keep going, but time has gone by and I need to meet my club members. Gonna treat them to a little extra stroll. I hope it's not too packed up there because that's where they're headed. And from up there, there's a gorgeous view of Montmartre, the hill of Montmartre, from one hill to the next, basically. That's right, yeah, that's right, Sylvain. Montmartre is where Lupin. Voila! I'm going to do this so you can see behind me. So it's pretty, kind of. Voila. Well, I just want to say goodbye. I thank you for joining me on this stroll today. It had been a little while. I hope you enjoyed it. I have a virtual tip jar, so if you'd like to make a contribution, they're gratefully accepted. They go towards the cost of making this tour. And again, look up the club because I'll be running some really fun events in April. And you want to join the fun, see more of Paris and France, this is where you should go. You can cancel at any time, and I promise you it'll be a great investment if you're a Francophile. So thank you so much. And club members, I will be seeing you in about 5 minutes in the private Facebook group. À bientôt les amis.